Action!
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Johnson, and with me, as always, is scientist Frank Marchis, and this is the Grudge Report. We are here to continue our special Stargate SG-1 romp through some of the best episodes of 10 seasons, brought to us by gateworld.net, who had a fantastic list, and so that's what we're working our way through. This week, we're going to talk about Season 3's episode, which is episode 22, Nemesis, the season finale. Again, spoilers abound, so at this point, if you haven't watched Stargate SG-1, why haven't you? All right, so this is the end of Season 3. Apropos of basically nothing, we're back. It feels like these are really good choices of episodes to kind of follow in the order given, because they do link to each other without all of the stuff in between. So here we are. The show starts off with everybody. Daniel's in the infirmary, and he's had appendicitis, so he's had his appendix removed, and it seems like a terrible place to recover from surgery because it is very noisy and it doesn't seem very private. And I was very no pass. And Jack wants to wander off and go fishing. Samantha's idea of a vacation is more science, which, again, the stereotypical science is, the scientist is very, very involved in their science and has nothing beyond their science trope. So Frank and I will debate that with anybody.
Yes.
I like to get away from my science. Thank you.
We have life. We are human.
We do.
We have life.
I mean, you were out enjoying the snow not too long ago.
Yeah. I go for vacation, and I appreciate vacation because it's also a way to kind of reset just your brain and maybe read books that you wanted to read before, or do stuff that you always are dreaming about. And this way, when you are in your office working, you don't think about them all the time. You just do them.
Although, I mean, at the same time, I do understand her point, because there is a lot of stuff that I would like to work on that if I didn't have work like that I had to be doing, I would want to be doing. So I understand it. But if I'm handed, again, as Jack points out, if I'm handed leave, I'm taking it. So Jack is getting ready to go, and he's zapped up to Thor's ship, and things are bad. And we are introduced to probably my least favorite baddie of the entire series, which is the replicators, because I am deeply arachnophobic, and these are very, very much spiders. Mechanical spiders, maybe, but still spiders, and they still skitter, and they still freak me out. And I realized as I was watching this that the series directors were really nice, because I know from reading later stuff that Michael Shanks, who plays Daniel, is also severely arachnophobic. And in later scenes with the replicators, had to literally be blindfolded while things were being set up because he couldn't handle it. So I think that was sort of like a great impetus for them to have him have appendicitis and be basically out of this. And also he voices Thor, so it would have been weird to have him talking to himself a lot of the time. So Jack's up on the ship. He gets to find out about the replicators. He finds Thor, who is not doing well because he's damaged, and there's other stuff going on that we're not told about yet. Thor has set all of this up so that Jack can handle it, and I'm like, you brought Jack? Like, of all people, you brought Jack, and then you handed him your computer and said, here, learn stuff? So yeah, that was a thing. So Jack manages to call back down to Earth, let them know what's going on. Long story short, the general sends Samantha and Teal'c, pulls Teal'c back from break, and they go up to go help, and they're sent with like a ton of explosives and stuff. And it is a bit of a wild ride, but as much as I like Stargate, this was not one of my favorites. One, for the replicators, and two, just because it gets really into the like technical, let's blow things up kind of side of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very much that Galaxy Quest feeling of, we're going to hit the button at one, everything will stop at 1 second. So, and plus it was a season finale, so it was designed to keep you hanging, and that it does. All right. So Sam is working on a project instead of taking a vacation. And that project is trying to understand this Nakuda reactor. So I know we've talked a little bit about science fiction elements, and we talked about it particularly with regards to how many there were in the previous episodes. What is Nakuda, and does it have a real element number? Is it replacing something on our own table of elements? What have we got here?
So Nakuda, I look online and I found out that it's a mineral very dense, which has an atomic number of 98. Okay. So apparently it's used in the science fiction show by a lot of races to as a weapon, because it has this kind of weird property to amplify the energy around it, etc. So basically, the Stargate, I didn't know that, are made of Nakuda as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, I discover things. Then I look around, but Nakuda does not exist. It's not a real element. Sorry to disappoint you. There is no real element that has a number of 98 and amplify the energy around it. That would be great for us. We will solve so many of our energy problems we have so far on this planet, but it does not exist. The number 98, it's a very interesting element for us because we live in California, and 98 is Californium. So I look online about the Californium because there's so many elements that I don't know all of them by heart. I used to learn the Mendeleev table, but I think I stopped around 50, and then that was all.
You made it farther than I did. I think I'm only up to about 20.
No geeks. The most useless way of using your memory. But when you're a teenager, you love this kind of challenge. But anyway, so Californium is CF. That's the name. If you see CF somewhere, do not touch CF here. That means you have Californium, and you should really not touch it, because Californium is a radioactive element. So meaning that it doesn't stay in a stable, it doesn't stay as stable. After a while, it splits and emit radiation particles. So it's one of the first elements which have been synthesized. I mean, it does not exist in nature. You cannot find it in nature. It was synthesized at the Lawrence Berkeley lab in 1950, so a long time ago. Maybe just to explain, to create those elements, what we generally do, we take an element, an heavy element, in this case is curium, which is number 96, and then you bombard it with particles. And in this case, you bombard it with alpha particles, which are helium-4 ions. And by bombarding these curium, atoms of curium with those particles, you basically create an heavier element, number 98, which is a californium. But the californium will not stay stable for a long period of time. It has a half-life which is very short, and of course, it's 60 days, roughly. So basically, after 60 days, the californium you created does not exist. Half of it does not exist anymore. That's the half-life of an element. I can talk about forever about the californium, but I'm not sure it's very interesting. But if you want to find californium, you can go close to the hospitals. Apparently, there is some, because it's used for its property, because it emits neutrons. So any machine that need a neutron as a source, you will have californium as a source for this. And if you go to Nevada, you may find traces of californium because of the atmospheric nuclear test they did over there in the 60s, in the 80s.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in nature, we thought the californium was visible in neutrons, in supernovae. You know, where there is this explosion of star, the last part of the life of a large star, this star will explode, basically, becoming a supernova. And during this explosion, there is a lot of energy and a lot of high pressure. So you have formation of those radioactive elements as well. So they observed supernovae, and they basically thought they detected lines indicating the presence of californium. But then a paper came out a few years later claiming that it was not californium, it was nickel 56. And now you know everything about californium.
So because it's synthesized, it's entirely possible that maybe somewhere else it could be a natural thing, and it could be slightly different.
The law of physics is the same, so it will always split, no matter what.
I know. I'm still kind of amused that they used an actual element number on that one.
I think it's kind of sad that science fiction show need to create new atoms to explain properties of. If you want to create a material that we have very interesting property, in this case, amplify the energy around it, you don't have to create a new atom. Just create a new molecule. The combination of atom could have this property. And I'm noticing that more and more now we're doing this show that often those writers need to think that they need to create a new atom. No, they should just create a new combination of atom, a new molecule that will have the property. And now we know we have molecules that have very weird properties, like a superconductor at ambient temperature and so on. So why don't they use those instead of inventing a new atom?
A friend of mine, Mary Amber, she's a singer from Australia, and she has a song that is, so there's Tom Lair's Elements song, which is all of the elements sung, and she does one that's all of the science fiction elements. And she has enough to actually make up a song, because this is a thing. So it really does add in, like, nakuda, unobtainium, dilithium, all of these things are in there, and you have to, like, she sings it very quickly, so when you listen to it, you're like, wait, what was that one? Wait, what show's that from? And there's a lot. It turns out this is again a very common trope among science fiction shows, creating your own elements. So we have this Nakuda. This becomes important. We have these bugs. They're awful. I hate them. And because of all of this that's now going on, you wanted me to mention that at back on Earth, we have raised the DEFCON level to 3. Now, you and I, as growing up during the end of the Cold War, because we're the same age, we are literally the same age. We share a birthday and everything.
This week. Happy birthday, Bess, by the way.
Happy birthday, Frank. And so we remember what DEFCON was, because we lived that, right? Like it was a thing that you actually like had to check. And my father was military, so it was definitely an important thing. Like, where were we at? It was basically for me, it was a part of the Cold War. I think it is just a Cold War thing. I think that I don't think we really use it now, and I don't think there's been really like a use for it, but it's defense readiness condition. And so the lower the number, the worse it gets. So it's kind of like the Homeland Security colors that were invented a while back. Depending on the color was where we were with Homeland Security. DEFCON was the same thing. So at like 5, you're fine. Everything's cool. That there's no threats, no big deal. DEFCON 4 was pretty standard because we had all this nuclear weapon proliferation. In the show, they move it to DEFCON 3. And there's a threat. They know there's a threat. They don't know exactly what the threat is, but everybody's basically prepping to deal with it. So that's where we're at in the show. And for those who might have grown up during a later time period, we're explaining all the old tech to you kids. So feeling old once again. So they've.
So maybe you could explain why they decide to go to DEFCON 3. It's related to Go ahead.
Well, because they have a spaceship in orbit, but they can't find it. It's cloaked, so they don't know what the threat is, but they know it's there.
And the point during the Cold War, what was happening is that even if the American knew, for instance, that there was a spaceship there, they didn't know whether or not the Soviets at the time knew about that. So they could have considered that this spaceship was a threat coming from United States, so could have retaliated before. So that's the reason they increased the DEFCON already to 3, because even if it's not with the Soviets, with the replicator that we are kind of in danger, they don't know how the other side will react. And that was the fear
I think the difference here is that we didn't have the Soviets during the Stargate era. We have the Russians, and we've conflicted with the Russians during the Stargate shows. Yay for making progress. Okay, so we've gone to DEFCON 3. Everybody's on edge. Nobody knows what's going on because we really aren't communicating with the ship. Now we have 3 of our SG-1 team members up there. Daniel's wandering Stargate Command in terrible condition. It's like, go back to bed, dude. Um, and Thor's not doing well, and Sam's now having to like learn all of the computer tech on her own, basically, because Jack just goes, move that there.
I love this scene
So
when she's in front of the computer and she learned quickly how to use this computer. Can you imagine, like, now you give an iPhone to someone who never seen it? I'm not sure this person will know how to use it. Just the idea of touching the screen. Someone from the 80s will not get the idea that you can touch the screen and scroll up and down and all of this, for instance. But she got it very quickly by moving those kind of weird stones. So I will say kudos to the species of Thor, I forgot the name, because they managed
Asgard.
Asgard, because they managed to do a graphical interface which is intuitive enough for another species to understand how to use it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that made me laugh was that Jack figured out how to use it. Which, Jack is not like the most technologically adept person, and his eyes glaze over when anyone tries to give him an explanation. In fact, he even says that as he was listening to one part of the recordings on how things worked on the ship, that he like zoned out because it was just too technical for him, which is why he hands it off to Samantha and says, here, you learn it and figure it out. So they're trying to figure out how to save themselves, Thor, Earth, but not the ship. They've already decided that they're blowing the ship up. So that's great. So there's a whole lot of that, and that's when my eyes glazed over because they start talking in kind of military technobabble.
Kind of.
It's not like the Star Trek technobabble where you're like, yeah, that's definite technobabble, and you're just making up stuff as you go. But it was more military technobabble, so it was lots of acronyms on explosives and weapons and where we can blow things up, and it got a little bit into spaceships, but in such a way that Thor's ship is so far beyond anything we have. I mean, that was kind of what struck me. Was one of the things they were talking about was sending the space shuttle up to rescue them, and my heart broke just a little bit because it's like, yeah, no, we've got the space shuttle ready to go, and we've sent you up with spacesuits if you have to do an EVA, and I'm like, oh, the space shuttle. Oh, this is so long ago.
Shall we explain to the young people, what is a space shuttle? No, I'm kidding.
I think most of them know what that one is. Yeah, I don't think the space shuttle is as foreign as DEF CON, so I think we're good there. But yeah, so that kind of caught my attention. It was like, yeah, we're going to send the space shuttle up. I'm like, the space shuttle is so far below Thor's level of tech at that point. It's like, yeah, it's a giant flying brick that can go up and come back down, and that's basically about it. Like, it doesn't have many capabilities in space. It's not doing things. Most of what is cool about the space shuttle is like the robotic arms and stuff that you could use to do things. But
the spaceship of Thor is called the belly scanner, which I did not Google it to know what it means, but he has a cloaking device, so they cannot see it. It's very, very cool. We don't see much about the technology except that there is sensors inside the spaceships, so we can see they have the thermal sensors, so they can see the tiny dot when Tilk and Jack
are moving around.
Basically, walking, and they explain that what you see in this case is only the human being because we are warm because of our temperature, our body, but they don't see the replicator because the replicator seems to be pure machine.
And there's no heat. They're basically wandering. They're wandering bits of the ship because they're literally taking the ship apart to make more of themselves.
So there is one thing: if a machine is still slightly hot, by the way, logically, because they need energy, right? and the conversion of energy is not perfect. So logically, they should have a small signature, heat signatures coming from.
Well, and that's on an individual basis, but there's not any individual replicators, right? These are always wandering around in small packs, basically. So you should still see like a spread out heat signature of a bunch of them. You know, you have that many together. If each one's giving off a little heat together, they're going to make an actual. You should be able to see it. So,
except if they are made of material which are supraconductor that I mentioned. In this case, they don't. In the circuitry, there is no loss of through heat, so they will be perfect machine. That's very cool to have this kind of machine that never emit any heat. You know that's not the case in our society. You touch your computer, it's warm because circuits are not perfect. Right. So shall we talk about this specifically, the replicators? Because there is a lot to talk here, and I know you don't like them, but I.
All right. Let's talk about the replicators.
We just pretend they're not spiders. They're something else.
So a running joke with my friends, we call them teddy bears, like literally spiders. Perfect. Spiders are teddy bears because Beth cannot handle spiders. Okay, so mechanical teddy bears.
So we found out that we found out about them through an explanation given by Thor. So they are coming from a civilization that was in the same galaxy that the Asgard, so the Ida galaxy. And apparently, they were created by a technological civilization which disappeared and been replaced by those technobugs, teddy bears. And they replicate, and they destroy basically planets. They arrive on the planet. They have some kind of smart brain that tell them where to find minerals or material that they need. They absorb this mineral, and then they somehow, and I know in the next episode they show how they do it. They replicate and they multiply, and they cover the entire planet. And when they're done with this planet, they go to another one, and they do the same over and over. And they are coming to do the same to us.
Yeah, they just consume. So that's. And Thor, in trying to save his own species, his own people, had captured them on his ship, and they found the coordinates for Earth and information about it in the computer, and went, "Ooh, tasty! That looks good. That's a planet full of resources. Let's go get it." And so
they're a plague in the galaxy. That's what Thor said. They are a plague in our galaxy, and now they're coming to our galaxy. They will do the same. So the reason I want to talk about this is because it's one of the evolution of an intelligence technological civilization that we've been discussed. We discuss a lot about the way we can wipe out such a civilization. And first thing that come in mind to people is a nuclear blast or any type of mutual destruction through a war. It can be a biological, chemical agent that kill all the species, all the member of the species. It could be also an asteroid impact, supernovae exploding nearby. And finally, and that's the one that I like here, is basically what we call a technological disaster, such as a gray goo scenario. And this is not science fiction because this has been published in a paper, and I will put the reference in the description, a few years, 2 years ago. And they basically describe the end of the civilization, and they mentioned that. The paper is recent, so they don't talk about technobugs like we have here. They talk more about nano machine, those tiny machines that we are doing now that could basically use a few atoms to assemble themselves and do some simple task, but be able to reproduce as well and do copy of themselves with a few of the materials surrounding them. So what the Thor says is that those creators basically created those replicators, this intelligent species, and something happened. They lost the control. They started developing. They wiped out their own planet, and they started going through other planets in the galaxy. It's possible that this happened or had happened to a civilization. So it's possible that one day we will go to a planet and we will find out that there was a civilization there, and the planet has been completely modified, covered with what we call the grey goo in the case of nanomachine, which has been taking over the planet and wiped out all life on the planet. It's a sad way of ending a technological civilization. It's one of the worst, I think, because it's a self-destruction due to technology. And
yeah,
Thor says something very cool. He say it's the overconfidence in the technology that's been doing this, and multiple times they mention that.
Yeah, he talks about that with regard to the ship. You know, it was an overconfidence in the capabilities of the ship, an overconfidence in their own tech, that kind of thing. That they figured, no, we got this, and it turned out not so much. And I know one of the things that we learn later about the replicators and is that they learn. So they learn and they adapt quickly, and that's a problem because they basically have a hive mind. So what one experiences, if they have a moment to share it with the rest of the hive, then they all know it. So it's one of those. It's a big problem for them. So yeah, so the whole thing is that they're trying to destroy these before they get to Earth, then save themselves. Jack basically was resigned to the fact that they weren't going to survive. They beam the Stargate up and realize that, and back on Earth they realize, oh, they're going to use the Stargate to go to another planet to come back to Earth. So now they're getting the second gate ready so that they have it like back up and in position. I'm like, how many gates do we have to go through? We just keep rescuing gates from the bottom of the ocean. Like we're just
you make the story way more interesting for the these multiple gates. There was
again, it's that Galaxy Quest. Oh, everything ends at 1 second, right? That's how this episode feels.
You want to talk about Telk and spacewalk?
Oh yeah, the spacewalk. We should get to that. Okay, so I was talking about the space shuttle and the EVAs, and they've sent them a spacesuit so that they can go do stuff. And because of the way that the replicators are learning the ship, they keep getting shut out of systems. So they've now sent Teal'c outside on an EVA, and Teal'c takes it because there's a possibility of radiation damage. And because Teal'c has the symbiote within him, that symbiote, the benefit that Teal'c gets from this relationship, the symbiote gets to live. Teal'c gets basically a not quite Wolverine-like healing factor going. So he can recover from the radiation damage more quickly than a human can, and that keeps him sort of ahead of the damage. So we talked about this during our Star Trek episodes, that radiation damage, once it starts its process, it's very hard to backtrack, where here he has this creature inside that helps him backtrack from it. So it basically is healing the damage, probably not quite as fast as he's taking it. So he's out doing this spacewalk in an EVA suit, which is really cool. And why don't you talk more about like what was going on with that?
So one thing I noticed is that first I mentioned about the problem of radiation. We have done EVA before, and astronauts never mentioned the problem of radiation. They stay for 3 hours. So the explanation I have for that, the scientific explanation, is that they are not in the magnetosphere of Earth. They're outside. So that's why they claim there will be some radiation issue, because if you're outside the cocoon, the magnetosphere surrounding Earth, then you're not protected from radiation, very energetic radiation coming from the sun activity. However, I'm very surprised that we have this limit of 6 hours that I mentioned, because I think we can survive this. I'm not a specialist in radiation, but I'm pretty sure we can survive to those radiation longer than that. We send humans to the moon. They went there, came back. It's more than 3 days, right? And they come back and they live a long life. Neil has been around for a long time. All of them have been around for a long time. They're still around. So
Buzz is still around.
Yeah,
he's still kicking. Yeah.
So I don't think the radiation should be an issue in this story. They should have found something else to explain why Teal'c should wear this EVA suit, and and be able to go to space. So then the symbiote story, it's once again, it's another story we have a lot. It's recurrent in science fiction. This idea that we have species that don't live by themselves, but they are a combination of species which make them more adapted to the environment or better. So that could be because they're protected. That could be because they have an access to something else, like the memory of the other host that we have in Discovery. And in this case, is apparently purely kind of medical. The symbiote help tell species to survive to tougher environment. But the symbiote is also surviving because it's in the body of Telk. So what kind of you look at? I know you look at this. What's the name of this type of relationship between two species?
I think we said it was mutualism. So this is that's yes. They're both getting a benefit from it. So Tilk gets longer life and faster healing, better health, enhanced strength, that kind of thing, and the symbiote gets to live, really.
So
and thrive.
Can we say that humans are living a mutualism? I will say yes. More and more, we are noticing that we need those bacteria that we have in our guts, for instance, on our skin, to live better. I mean, to be able to consume different type of food, we need those bacteria. So that's a recent discovery, in fact. And now we can say that we also a mutualism. We're living in a mutualism symbiote. We are mutualist. How do we say that? A mutualistic species? I don't know. How do we say that?
Sure, that sounds good. That. Mutualistic, yeah, mutualistic species. Sure, we'll go with that.
But it's not, of course, we don't have this tiny animal that thinks for us and tell us what to help us to have better memory and all of this. It's just to be able to eat food.
Yeah. But you know, eating food's kind of important, so I'll take it.
Good. Okay, I think that's all for me in this episode. Anything for you?
So let me just wrap it up. So things explode. It is there. Things explode. They manage to uncloak the ship so that people can see it come in, and it goes down over the Pacific. I think was it the Pacific?
Yeah, not too far away from San Francisco, if I remember.
Yeah, right. It was off the coast of California. I do remember that now. They said it was something like several hundred miles off the coast of California, and yay! Until you get to the very last scene, and there's a replicator climbing up out of the water onto the debris, and it's like, no, right? This is a two-parter. So I'm gonna have to watch the second half.
If you watch the other episode, watch the next episode because it's super.
Yeah, so definitely. I remember being very frustrated when this came out that, you know, we then had to wait for another season. You don't have that issue, so immediately run and watch season 4, episode 1.
That's what I did.
I will have to do the same.
And then I went to bed at 2 a.m.
I have to admit I'm going to be a bit of a traitor. I got done and I started watching Clone Wars because I've been binging that, so that's what I did. But I will go back and watch season 4, episode 1, and we will. I think that's pretty much everything we had. So we're going to wrap it up with that. We will be back in a couple of weeks with whatever our season 4 episode is. Again, that list is on gateworld.net. So if you want to stay ahead of us and know what we're going to talk about, that's where you can find it. And I am Beth. This is Frank. And we will be back in a couple of weeks. And Frank will be back with another episode on The Expanse season 4 with our colleague Margaret. So stay tuned, ring the bell, make sure that you subscribe and get those notifications, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.